Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Junos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Nibbelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Junos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And in this podcast, I'm going to go over the most puzzling players league wide as submitted by the Apples and Junos Discord server. Let's get it. And welcome on in, everyone. It is week 22. Playoffs are upon us. If you're like me, all of your playoffs are starting right now. And it feels good. It feels right. We need to get some results now. This is where the rubber meets the road. Let's get it. We've got Sidonian Knight in here. Let's go. Hashtag 0G. And I'll mention this a few times throughout the night, but I've pinned a comment in the live here on this video. This is just a form that I put out every year. It's a listener survey, or in this case, I guess on YouTube Live, a watcher survey. So if you wouldn't mind clicking that link, it'll take 5 minutes. You just kind of click through, and it gives us a little bit of information about what worked and what didn't in terms of the content that we put out there this year, and be really helpful. If you're listening to this on the podcast a day later, then I'm going to have it posted in the Discord and pinned up in the new content channel on Discord. So if you wouldn't mind getting into the Discord and seeking that out and responding to that, we're going to be talking about it for the next little bit on the podcast here to try to get as many responses as we possibly can so that we can continue to improve not only our fantasy hockey game but also our fantasy hockey podcasting game and get you guys as many dubs as possible. With that being said, we've got some more comments coming in here. Armin's in here. What up, fam? Showtime, baby. Bro, I dropped Yossi for Eberle early stream. LMAO, enough is enough. It's hard to go against it at this point. It really feels from the comments that we're seeing from Trotz and others that Yossi might just be a guy they shut down this year, and it's hard to blame them given how their season has gone. Also says, traded Draisaitl, Forsberg for Brady and Yossi when I needed a D in playoff optimization early on. Yeah, that feels bad, but Forsberg, would have been nice to have. Yossi theoretically gets you there, but yeah, with the injury obviously not working out. So tough luck on that one for sure. Agent Orange, what off playoff season? That is correct. Sidonian Knight, does Braden Point need to be attached to Kucherov in order to be relevant? He's a can't cut, but should I start sitting him? I don't think so. I think Braden Point is a good enough player to play in his own right. It certainly takes a number of points off his upside, what you might expect from him over the course of time if Kucherov is out. But definitely, I'm trying to think of how small the league would be where I'd start to sit Braden Point. Definitely have to be smaller than 10 teams, standard roster sizes. I'm a pretty big fan of Braden Point. He's just shown consistency year over year, similar to Leon Draisaitl. He doesn't need a ton of shots or a ton of opportunities to make him count. He's a very, very efficient player. Melinda, can you talk about 0G? I can talk about 0G. Basically, the long and short of it is we try to not spend a lot of draft capital on goaltenders because we have players like Mackenzie Blackwood that emerge from the woodwork throughout the course of the season, and we rely on those players to win us our championships. I don't know what I can really say. The only goalie I picked in my 16-team Tier 1 cupful was Petr Mrazek at the beginning of the year. He was pretty awful, but now I'm rolling into my playoffs with Mackenzie Blackwood and Joey Daccord and feeling pretty good about it. You really do not have to draft goaltenders to win at fantasy hockey, and I don't know what more to say about it. The proof is in the pudding. It's pretty self-evident at this point. Armin, in my keeper league, I have Jack Hughes and Matt Tkachuk, but somehow still gunning for it hard. Nice. Yeah, you can make up for injuries. I'm dealing with a lot of injuries in my leagues too, but still going for the titles. I'm not taking that as an excuse either. Mr. Kevin, hey Nate, what are your opinions of off slash on players? Like, do you believe in that up year, down year, up year, etc. pattern? I think about Kyle Connor, maybe Matthews, goalies like Vemelka and Gustafson. It's an interesting theory. I think the problem is that by the time you could realistically have enough data to identify that, I don't know how you can, like, it might be already past the point where it's worth thinking about because they're past the prime of their career and past their peak relevancy for fantasy anyway. Um, so yeah, it's not something that I would base a lot of opinions on. I think probably, in some high percentage of cases where it appears that way, there's other, environmental factors that are causing those up year, down years. Matthews with the up year, down year, it's pretty clear that it's been injury both this year and 2 years ago, not last year, but the year before that, where an injury has been the cause of him not scoring a lot of goals. Matthews actually been scoring a lot of points, just not a lot of goals as of late. So, yeah, I think that's pretty clearly what's going on with Matthews in particular. And I think for a lot of other players, sometimes like we just don't necessarily get the reasoning, but that is what's going on under the surface. An injury, coaching changes. It takes a year for them to get suited under a new coach, and then that coach gets fired, and they have a new coach again, and it takes them another year. And by the time you've identified the pattern, you may be wrong about that pattern, and so they may just have 2 good years in a row, and you've missed out, or B, it might be that the pattern doesn't actually exist and it's other environmental factors. So it's not something that I'm taking into account personally. Armin, time to start giving these Blues D some love. Who the heck is the power play one? Yeah, it's your guess is as good as mine kind of situation at this point, and I think that's the way that Jim Montgomery likes it. Unfortunately, he does seem pretty content to just roll out a 1A 1B situation. In the last game, Falk got the majority of the power play time. For whatever that's worth. I think the other unit scored the goal, though. I think Buchnevich it was on the power play, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, it really is six in one hand and half a dozen in the other when it comes to the Blues power play for sure. Nestle Swolehouse in my championship finals. Just wanted to give Nate and Blake, along with everyone, Discord a shout out for helping me get here. Let's get to biz and get these chips. That's awesome. Best of luck to you this week. I'm sure that you can get it done. Point has been a ghost. Yeah, it's not been a good stretch, but also he's been even more efficient than usual. So it's probably just some natural regression there as well. Yeah, I think it's probably a mixture of Kucherov not being there and just some natural regression. Lost ones, let's get a goat. Good luck in your playoffs. Thank you. Appreciate that. Armin says someone just dropped Bedard. I can drop Eberle for him. League has plus minus, unfortunately. Yeah, I think I'm into Bedard for next week. So that, I mean, if you're getting him in for this week, which seems unlikely unless you do have, some lower level players that you would play him over this week, then yeah, you could go ahead and do that. Right away, basically. But if not, then maybe you try to get the 2 games of Eberle in and then try to add Bedard. I don't know how quickly you think Bedard's going to go off the wire. That could play into it. If you feel you really got to get him and you're not worried about this week, you're more looking ahead to next week when Chicago is the 3 off nights, then maybe it is worth it at the moment. Jordan, hey Nate, looking for a Seattle stream for this week for the back-to-back. Would you prefer Eberle over Beniers, Schwartz, and Stevenson? Standard Yahoo Points League, no plus minus. Let's throw these guys in. I did make that statement on the pod yesterday with Blake that I kind of preferred Eberle over the other options in Seattle, not named Jared McCann at the moment. So let's throw in the stats here and just see what we see. Basically, the way that I'm thinking about it is in Seattle, all I really want is somebody who's hot because nothing else seems to matter. And if I look at it right now, Jordan Eberle has 7 points in his last 5 games. Jaden Schwartz has better underlying metrics for sure, but he's done this before, and he has 0 points in his last 5 games, as cold as can be. He kind of does this flip-flop reverse situation. So yeah, I think at the moment I am taking Eberle and just hoping he can stay in the Flames a little bit longer here. But honestly, I don't feel confident about recommending any Seattle streamer over another at this point, and anyone who tells you they are confident about that is probably lying to you. So I would go Eberle personally, but it's not a take that I'm particularly confident in. Jackson Trotsky, 60 on the roster, need to drop one. Hedman, Fox, Carlson, Dunn, Lacombe, Faber. A couple points scoring. Have a bye this week. Driving myself crazy trying to decide. Need you to decide for me, Nate. Okay, so let's look ahead to that playoff schedule for these guys. Obviously, that's going to be a pretty big deciding factor when you've got a lot of players that are probably in a similar range. So Lacombe has the off nights, which is going to be helpful for sure. Next week, Tampa, you're not dropping Hedman. So I guess we could start there, right? The guys that you're not dropping Hedman, you're not dropping Fox. So those guys are going to play for you for sure. Carlson, I don't think you're likely to be moving away from Carlson. Vince Dunn probably is in play, especially with 3 games, 0 off night schedule. Lacombe, 3 games, 3 off nights, and Faber plays 4 games with 1 off night. Lacombe did play back on the top power play unit in the game yesterday. That was a good sight to see. There is still a bit of a 1A, 1B situation going on here, but it was Lacombe with Terry, Zegras, McTavish, Carlson, which I'm going to call the top unit at least. So that's a good look there. I think I want to hang on to Lacombe. I want to look at what Vince Dunn has gotten to over the last little bit. I don't like dropping Dunn. His underlying metrics look really good the last little bit. And then Brock Faber. Faber gets you the extra game played, but definitely a lower ceiling player. Yeah, it's a tough spot. I mean, you could look at Carlson too. He's got 4 points his last 5, not playing too poorly. Really tough spot, actually. Tougher than I thought it was going to be when it started out with it. I think I would drop. I mean, it's tough because if you make it through week 23, I would like to have Faber's 4 games, 4 off nights for the following week. But if I'm just looking at week 23, I think I would want to keep Dunn over Faber for the week, even though it's 3 games. It is very close between Dunn and Faber for me. That is the part that I'm really thinking through. Rasmus Anderson just scored and did the stare down of the guy in the corner. Oh man, that's one of these nights. That's great. Yeah, I think that's the route that I would go. It would be between Dunn and Faber. It's really hard for me to go away from Vince Dunn when his metrics look that good at the moment. But yeah, I'm not going to fault you for taking the extra game played with Faber and betting on yourself to win this week and get there for next week as well. But if it's me, I think I am dropping Faber and I'm going with Dunn. That is really, really tight though. All right. Web page 87. How would you rank these for week 23? Huberdeau, Voronkov, Hayton, Zuccarello, planning to hold 1-2 through to week 24 and stream/drop 1-2. So Huberdeau, next week, Calgary is 3 games, 0 off nights. Voronkov is 3 games, 2 off nights. Hayton is Utah, plays 4 games, 3 off nights, right? And Minnesota is 4 games with 1 off night. Pretty even spread here. I don't have a lot to separate these players, so it is probably going to mostly come down to schedule here for me. So I would put Huberdeau last. He's been decent as of late, at least in the point scoring, but the underlying metrics are still not great. Crazy minutes, which is nice, but yeah, it's hard to go away from Huberdeau, but given the off nights that you're getting from the other players, I think I would go. Maybe I'd go Voronkov last. I'm really not impressed with Voronkov, and now they're moving the lines around. We'll get to it. Voronkov is on this list to talk about here tonight, but the underlying metrics are just so bad. That's tough to stomach. Now he's going to be centering the top line, it looks like, which is not something I'd be super interested in. So I'm just wondering if we should really be excited, even if he is top line, top power play. I think I would drop Huberdeau first just because of the schedule. Then I'd drop Voronkov. Then I would drop Hayton. Then I would drop Zuccarello. I actually think Zuccarello is going to bounce back rather handily here quickly. Next up, Armin, would you rather Bedard or Jenner or healthy Norris? Definitely Yeah, I would take Bedard over these guys. I would. Um, Definitely over Norris. It's a bit more of a conversation with Jenner, but Jenner's off the top power play. So even in a Bangers Cats, I think I'm still going Bedard there. Mr. Kevin, any goalies you're keeping an eye on down the stretch here? I'm rolling in with Saros, Dostal, and Kumper. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Columbus, especially if Merzlikins continues to miss time. That would be one that I'd definitely be wanted to just keep an eye on the situation. Either Jet Greaves or Daniil Tarasov, if either of them take the reins there for any stretch of time, that could be a pretty valuable spot. You're right to be interested in Dossal. Obviously, Jarry has played quite well over the last little bit. Your guess is as good as mine. If that continues, I like Spencer Knight at the moment. He looks confident. I mean, Charlie Lindgren for this week is probably going to get a couple of starts, so you could look that way. Vejmelka's at 44% rostered. He's probably gone in most leagues that are, caring about goaltenders, but obviously he's not gone in all leagues at 44% rostered, so that's a look. Frederick Anderson is probably going to get 2 starts towards the back end of this week, so that's another look maybe for you there. Petr Mrazek could continue to get starts. He had a shutout in his last game against Vegas and has won 2 of the 3 starts for Detroit so far and has started 3 in a row. So not a great week this week for Detroit with the 2 games and 0 off nights, but probably a spot where he could get some volume if he's able to play reasonably well. So those are some guys to keep an eye on. Last ones, can I drop Dorofeev for this schedule? Can't fit him in on Thursday and Saturday. Doesn't feel worth holding till Sunday. Absolutely, you can. If you need to win this week, you can absolutely do that. CG, 12 team points, better rest of season for Hagee or Samoskevich. That is really tough. I want to say Verhaeghe, but it does sound like he's dealing with some sort of injury, and that might explain why they've been limiting his minutes a little bit, keeping him off the top power play just because they have other guys who can do that. Similar total minutes played between Samoskevich and Verhaeghe. If I'm just going by the numbers, I would go with Verhaeghe still, but it's a reasonable question to ask. I think it's very close. So I would take Verhaeghe still, but it's very close given the power play 1 deployment for Samoskevich and the fact that he's, a little bit hotter at the moment. Last one. Speaking of the Ducks, it's getting tough to hold Vetrano with McTavish doing well and Zegras back. Yeah, that's a real thing. Frank Vetrano has gone through a bit of cold spell here. It's 3 points in the last 5, so he's not sinking you, but the shots have fallen way off. He's been a big-time shooter on the season, still on the season 15th in shots per 60, but 206th over the last 5 games. Still getting 18.5 minutes a night, though, so that part is pretty good. CG, best fantasy hockey content. Appreciate you. Landeskog worth grabbing. We will get to that, but that's going to be a no from me, dog. Mr. Kevin, can you talk about Jenner? He got dropped for lack of production after not start, but Columbus Blue Jackets has great playoff schedule, and I'm in a Bangers too. Yeah, I think Boone Jenner makes some sense in a Bangers Cats. He's only got 2 assists the last 5 games, just under 18 minutes average time on ice. The underlying stats don't look great. It's a second line, second power play situation for him at the moment, it looks like, in Columbus. Yeah, I think you can add him. I would just be aware that he's probably like a 40-point pace guy, like a point every other game, and then you're hoping that he gives you good banger stats, and that's kind of the thesis with Jenner. So as long as that's valuable to you, then I think you can definitely be into that. Agent Orange, thoughts on Kyrou lately? Yeah, Jordan Kyrou is a guy I thought might go away just with a little bit less deployment from Jim Montgomery there. But yeah, you see the results. 3 goals, 7 points in his last 5. Under 16 minutes average time on ice. But he's 64th shots per 60, 3rd in shot attempts per 60, 31st individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 46th Corsi 4 per 60, 129 on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. He's been on fire. Yeah, it's tough because he is getting a lot less minutes than he deserves from a production standpoint, but he's getting it done at the moment. So, yeah, you're holding him for now, but it is a player that could be on the bubble if he goes cold again. He is the kind of scorer that does tend to run hot and cold, and so might be something you have to keep an eye on in the future. CG, like and subscribe to support. Thank you. Yes, please do that if you are here in the live. Max Bauer, my playoffs are weeks 23 through 25, and I have first round bye locked up. How should I go about my roster preparing for them? Points league with 0.5 for blocks. I've got Yossi and Peterka on IR. Points league with 0.5 for blocks. Realistically, you just want to look at these playoff schedules. I'd set your lineup, especially for week 23, right? That's the first week. You got to win that week to get to week 24. You got to win week 24 to get to week 25. This is common sense stuff, nothing groundbreaking here. But set your lineup for that week and figure out who's in, who's out, and then look at how you might be able to get some more games played. So you got Anaheim, Chicago, with those 3 games played, 3 off nights. You got the Islanders and the Utah Hockey Club with 4 games, 3 off nights. And then New Jersey as well, actually 4 games, 3 off nights. And then you got Vancouver with 4 games and 4 off nights in week 23. So that's definitely a look as well. So keep your eyes on those players. You have players like Geeky, Jenner, McCann, Kane, Samoskevich, and Nuge. So yeah, guys like Samoskevich and Geeky, like Boston plays 2 games, 1 off night in week 23. Geeky should not be on your roster at that point. There's a host of other players I would take from Anaheim, Chicago, Islanders. Like I'd take Kyle Palmieri over Connor, or not Connor Geeky, that's his brother, Morgan Geeky, for that week 23 in particular. So those are the kinds of moves I think he can make right away. Samoskevich plays 2 games, 2 off nights, and I believe, if I remember correctly, where is it? 2 games, 2 off nights, and if I remember correctly, I think they come towards the back end of the week. Yeah, it's Friday, Sunday. For Florida, so you're going to have to wait the entire week 23 till Friday for him to play a single game for you. That's not worth hanging on to, in my opinion, so you should be moving off Samoskevich if you don't have any games this week and you're preparing for week 23. So stuff like that can get you the big edge. Try to get in, even if you like Samoskevich and you want to add him back, maybe you can get, Dallas plays Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Can you get a Dallas player in for all 3 games there and then get Samoskevich back for Friday, Sunday after that and get 5 games out of that roster spot for the week? That's the way you need to be thinking about it at this stage. CG, any chance puzzling players can start earlier on Mondays to help us prep for the week before puck drop? Unfortunately, no. I have family, I have kids that need to get put to bed before I can come down here and start doing this. So this is as early as I can get it done, unfortunately. One thing before I start back into the list here, I want to mention again for people who've joined a little bit later here, there's a pinned comment that's a Google form listener survey that I've posted there. If you could take a minute and open up that and just keep that handy, and you don't have to do it while you're watching the stream here, but if you could fill that out, it'll take you just 5 minutes. It gives us a lot better idea of what's working and what's not, so that you have you have your say basically in the content that we're putting out here. We want to make sure, Blake and I always want to make sure that the content that we're putting out is directly applicable to you and your leagues. We tend to think it's good content, but we want to have your feedback as well and incorporate that moving forward. So pinned link in the comments in the live stream here if you can. Thank you. Max says, okay, I have week 23 as a bye and then play. Oh, okay, week 24, but I get what you're saying. Thank you. Okay, sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were on bye. I misread your original one. And Blake says, be gentle with the feedback in the listener survey. All right, so let's get into the list here. Start at the top. Matt Boldy, most requested. Just 2 assists in his last 5 games, 22 minutes average time on ice, 99 shots per 60, 66th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 170, Corsi 4 per 60, 188 in scoring chances, 4 per 60. My general take on Matt Boldy has not changed throughout the season. It's been a rough go for sure. And I just don't think that we have any reason to believe that should change. It's a tough spot because it's really just him trying to pull along this team. Actually, these metrics that you're seeing here are about the worst of the last at least since the Four Nations break, if not going back a little bit before that. He had been directing a ton of pucks on net, playing an insane amount of minutes. You can see 22 minutes a night. I do believe that these pucks are going to start going in for Matt Boldy sooner rather than later. It's just been a really rough ride in the last little bit in terms of the goal scoring, especially. It's been a rough ride for Minnesota as a whole. I do think they will turn things around. Would it be nice to have Kaprizov back? Yes. Do I think that Boldy can be, a 70, 75 point player, pace player without Kaprizov when he's getting 22 minutes a night? Absolutely. I believe he can be that player, and I believe he can do that for the rest of this season. Boone Jenner, 2 assists in his last 5. I did just talk about Boone Jenner, so I'm not going to dig into it here too much. I really think Boone Jenner is just a guy that you're looking at for your bangers cats situations, right? As I said, 40-point player, that kind of pace, point every other game, maybe with obviously some banger stats, some hits, some blocks. That's what you're expecting, and that's what you're getting out of a guy like Boone Jenner. Darcy Kemper was requested. I believe he's got shutouts in his last 2 games for Los Angeles, and so far so good in the game here tonight against Minnesota. Yeah, he's playing terrifically. Obviously was a late pick in a lot of leagues. Yeah, it was obviously going to be a good spot for him coming into Los Angeles. It's a good defensive environment. We've seen it prop up other goaltenders before him. And yeah, I think we're getting what we expected would happen. Maybe it wouldn't happen right away for Kemper, but it's a good spot for him to be, and he's going to get a lot of volume. It's a good spot to be having a 0G goaltender for sure. Then next up, we got all the top Columbus guys here: Dmitry Voronkov, Kirill Marchenko, Adam Fantilli. So the last lines, and I want to get this right, I believe it was Voronkov at center between Chinakhov and Marchenko. Yes. So this is what they're going with for the game here tonight. Chinakhov and Marchenko on either side of Voronkov, Fantilli between Jenner and Kent Johnson at the top of the lineup. So I don't like what's been happening with Voronkov. He's really fallen off. His underlying metrics were very good earlier on, but they really started to fall off, and he started to be dead weight on that top line. And in my mind, the biggest reason why that top line stopped scoring is his individual play. And so I'm not convinced that a move to center and adding more defensive responsibility is going to be what rejuvenates him and causes him to score some goals here. Yeah, if anybody's listening to this tomorrow, they'll have the results of this game, so they'll probably know better than I do what the result of that situation is. So far, it's in the second, getting close to the end of the second, and Columbus has not scored any goals. I mean, for all I know at this point, they may have already moved off of these lines, but yeah, I'm not convinced that that's a good look, and from the early returns, it doesn't look like it has been. But I am really quite worried about Voronkov in particular. If you're still rostering him, I do think he's droppable at this point if you need his roster spot. Marchenko, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5, 18.5 minutes average time on ice, 185 shots per 60, 164 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 194 Corsi, 4 per 60, 202 on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Puzzling that his underlying numbers have become this bad. I don't think that continues. I think Marchenko is good enough to turn this around. But yeah, it's not a great spot at the moment. I'd like to see him be playing with Fantilli and then, maybe elevate Boone Jenner to the top left wing spot. Give that a run. That would be my preferred orientation at the moment, but that's not what we're getting. Realistically, this kind of regression was probably always going to come for Columbus. They had some crazy high on-ice shooting percentages. Like on the season, Marchenko rather, is still at 13.7% on-ice shooting percentage. That's probably pretty high. Probably should be, a full percentage point below that. So probably this is a bit of regression, but he's also not playing particularly well, being particularly dangerous himself right now. And so I think we need to see a bit of a refresh there for Marchenko. He's shouldered a big load this year in terms of minutes, and it could just be that a bit of that is catching up to him as well. Adam Fantilli has 3 goals, 4 points in his last 5, 18 minutes average time on ice, 132nd shots per 60, 147th individual scoring chances for per 60. As I mentioned, now in this game, playing with Kent Johnson and Boone Jenner on the second, what you might call the second line if Marchenko is the first line determinant. I think that Fantilli is probably the guy that I'm worried about the least at the moment. I think he's really proven something here. But that being said, if and when Monahan comes back, now Fantilli has been moved off this top line even before that happens. So much bigger chance in my mind now that Monahan comes back and centers Voronkov and Marchenko in his first game out. So you would say I think that Fantilli's high-end upside is a little bit in question if he can't get back on that top line with Marchenko in particular. So that's where I'm at on Columbus at the moment. But I think there's more to be written here. We'll see what happens. They will snap this slump in terms of the scoring at some point here, and it'll be interesting to see where that comes from. And we'll obviously get once it starts to roll, then probably the lines stop shifting around, and then we'll have a better idea of what to expect from these players moving forward. Carter Verhaeghe, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5, just over 17 and a half minutes average time on ice, 75th shots per 60, 28th individual scoring chances for per 60, 4th Corsi 4 per 60, and 10th in on-ice scoring chances 4 per 60. So this is a spot where Verhaeghe is in the last game playing with Sam Bennett and Maki Samoskevich on what you'd call the second line there and not getting any power play time really at all in the last game. So it's tough for him there, but the underlying metrics are still so good. I'm still trying to hang on to Carter Verhaeghe. As I mentioned, next week, week 23, he only has the 2 games, Friday, Sunday, at the end of the week. They are off nights, so that part is good, but it is going to be hard to hang on to him all week without getting any production out of that roster spot. So I'm giving you the permission. If you need to drop Carter Verhaeghe to make your roster work, you absolutely can do that. All right, back to the comments. Let's see what we've got here. Fired Up Fantasy. Thoughts on Fired Up Fantasy, number 26 on Drafters. Some say this is easy 10K. Yeah, I haven't honestly gone back in to check on my teams in the last little bit here. I think I've still got, 5 or 6 in the top 100, so I've still got some live teams, but it sounds like you've got one that's probably a little bit hotter than that. Let's see what we've got here. Top of the list. Why is this not working for me? Give me the NHL. Sort. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, number 2. Very nice, very nice. What's this team got? Jack Hughes, that's tough. Timo Meier, Jesper Bratt, Clayton Keller, Dylan Larkin, Wyatt Johnson, Alex DeBrincat, Lucas Raymond, Rupe Hintz, Dylan Guenther, Martin Necas, Cale Makar, Rasmus Dahlin, Mikhail Sergachev, Luke Hughes, Connor Hellebuck, Darcy Kemper, Joey Decord. It's live. It's live for sure. Losing Hughes really hurts. That might have been a much surer thing without that. So yeah, I've got, 6 teams in the top 100 and 1 just out. My best team is at 24th right now. So, yep. Looks like I'm making my money back at the moment, but not much more. All right, back to it. Mr. Kevin Boldy has been on this like 10 times. LOL, he's must draft next year to me, depending on ADP. Could have easily ended with 80 plus points this season with everyone healthy and some luck. I tend to agree. Yeah, I'm not going to be moved off of Boldy. I think I may reevaluate how efficient I think Boldy will be because he hasn't been that efficient so far this year, and I might. Yeah, he might be more dependent on Kaprizov than what I originally thought. So that's a real thought in my mind now, where it wasn't really a consideration before the season. That being said, still a very young player. Could just be the season is terrible. He's had pretty terrible line mates for a lot of the season and really had to try to make that work and hasn't been able to. Is that a ding on him? Yes, of course, we'd love for him to just completely elevate everybody, but realistically, can you expect that out of every player to just automatically do that? I don't know. So maybe he's not, like 100 plus point talent, but maybe he's, in that 80 plus range next year, and we can be a little bit more confident about that if Kirill Kaprizov is back and healthy. CG 12 team points, weekly locks, off nights don't matter, no riffs. Have Burns and Riley as third and fourth D-men. Keep them or get someone like Faber, Lowry, Vlasic, playoffs weeks 23 through 25. Yeah, I would take Faber over both, and I would take Lowry over both as well, personally. Lowry doesn't have a great week 23, so maybe you hang on for 1 week there. Hang on to, I don't know who's got a better, whoever's got the most games played, basically. I think it might actually be the same. Week 23, Carolina's got 3 games. Toronto has 4 games. So hang on to Riley for week 23, and then maybe switch to Lowry after that. Boston has 4 games played in weeks 24 and 25, so maybe you can get that done after the fact, unless Lowry really goes off here in the next little bit. But I just, just on how many points do I expect them to score in the games that they play? I would take Lowry, then Faber, then Riley, then Burns. Rest of season. Vlasic is a bit of a question mark for me right now because Lev Shunov was taking the top power play. If Vlasic was getting top power play, then I'd also have him above Riley and Burns. Also in the same vein, same setup it looks like here. Best rest of season, Verhaeghe, Fantilli, Stamkos, Slav, Cousins, or Nyes. Playoffs weeks 23 through 25. No peripherals. That is interesting. I think these guys are mostly close enough that I'd be heavily influenced by whoever's got the best schedule, the most amount of games played. Ottawa has 13 games played. That's as good as it gets, so that's a point in favor of Cousins. Whereas Toronto, they've got 12 games played. Montreal has 13 games played, so that's a point in favor of Slavkovsky. Nashville, 12 games played. Columbus has 13 games played, so that's another point for Fantilli. And then Florida has 11 games played, so that's a rough one for Verhaeghe there. That's tough because I think Verhaeghe's probably the most naturally talented player of that group, but getting one less game played than anybody else. Yeah. I think the best of that group, given your playoffs weeks 23 through 25, I think I might go. That is tough. I want to say Fantilli, but as I mentioned, it is a little bit concerning that he might not have the top line deployment there, especially when Monahan comes back. I think I will go Fantilli, Slavkovsky, Stamkos, Cousins, Verhaeghe, Nyes, given the playoff schedule. But that is it. It's a really tough decision between that group. So I'm understanding why you're asking about that. Max Bauer, are Jenner and McCann droppable? I mean, yes, everybody to some extent is droppable at this stage of the season, right? You definitely shouldn't keep minuses on your roster. So if they are guys that are going to sit for you, if they're not adding anything to your lineup, if there's somebody that you really got to have out on the waiver wire, in general, I would say yes. Nestle Swolehouse, why does Markstrom continue to toot in my face? That is an excellent question. Goaltenders, they do that. Jordan asked Roenick or Lev Shunov, especially with Quinn Hughes' injury/shutdown scenario. It's a good question. Hughes has been playing a lot when he when he has played. So yeah, how likely is it that he gets shut down? It is very much up for debate at this point. I mean, I think you're in a spot. So I'll backtrack even more mentally here. So if you're only looking ahead to week 23, then Vancouver has that 4 games, 4 off night schedule. That's really attractive. Chicago has 3 games, 3 off nights, so that's a good schedule as well. But if you're looking at this week, where Chicago has 4 games, 1 off night, and Vancouver has 3 games, 0 off nights, then I would just go Lev Shunov over Hronek. Just hope that he's got the power play on lock for the rest of this week. Looks like Morgan Frost got a goal here for Calgary. They're up 2-1. That's where I'm at the moment. Because I'm feeling a little less, it's a little less likely now that Quinn Hughes does get shut down just based on what we've seen here. Jordan, hey Nate, how do Casper and Kent Johnson look under the hood? We can definitely take a look there. Marco Casper and Kent Johnson. Casper, 3 goals, 4 points in his last 5, 16.5 minutes average time on ice, 79th shots per 60, 42nd individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 59th Corsi, 4 per 60, 104 in scoring chances, 4 per 60. So, short answer to the question is pretty good. That being said, he's not on the top line anymore. He's playing with Kane and DeBrincat, which I actually quite like. It's a good spot for him there again. And yeah, just the fact that he's getting good looks with the top guys in Detroit, whether it be on the Larkin line or on the Kane line, either way, that's who you want him to have exposure to. So I'm pretty interested in all of that. If you can get through this week where Detroit has a terrible schedule with the Tuesday, Saturday, I think, are the only 2 games this week for Detroit. If you can get through all of that, then I'm interested again in Casper for the 4 games, 1 off night in week 23. So let's take a look at Kent Johnson. 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5, just over 17 minutes average time on the ice. 324th shots per 60, 372nd individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. Pretty brutal, quite honestly. I'd like to see if he can do something in this game here against the Devils, but it hasn't been much so far. They haven't had a power play. That was another thing I wanted to check to see if they shook up that unit, given the recent lack of scoring. But yeah, it's not been nearly as good as of late for Kent Johnson as it was earlier in the season. He was probably due for a lot of regression here, but the underlying metrics have kind of fallen off as well. So that is concerning to me there. All right. Stonks asked Tyler Pureblood Vertuzzi or Andre Big Kuzmenko in a deep league. Bertuzzi right now is just playing horrifically. Been bumped down the lineup, played on the 4th line with Veleno and Reichel in the last game. Still on the top power play, but I'm wondering how long that lasts as well. So yeah, I think I would take Kuzmenko for the power play and top line exposure there at the moment. But yeah, I'm not excited about either player for sure, but you're mentioning it's a deep league. I think I would go Kuzmenko personally. Who should be the drop to activate Hyman? Middleton, Vlasic, Luke Hughes, Mishkov. For me, that'd be Vlasic, just based on the fact that it looks like we're getting Lev Shunov top power play at the moment. So assuming that continues, I would drop Vlasic there. Hidden in plain sight, thoughts on deeper D, Lev Shunov, Sandberg, Scott Morrow, and Kakufo looking at a 4th D. That's Lev Shunov for me for sure. Carter Rother, in another league, I'm looking to open up a streamer spot. Would you agree with dropping Tippett and Stankoven since I have 7 ads? And if you've got 7 ads, there's a lot in play. Yeah, I would definitely be interested in making moves, having multiple streamer spots, opening things up, trying to get the absolute most out of a roster with 7 ads for sure. All right, back to the list here. We left off at Lev Shunov. So he's got just 1 assist in the last 3 games, but playing over 21 minutes a night. 35th shots per 60, 27th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 76th Corsi, 4 per 60, 162 in on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Yeah, it's a spot where, I mean, if you watched any of how Lev Shunov looked, there were people all over Twitter just singing his praises, how he was like instantly Chicago's best defender. That's a spot where, I mean, it's a low bar to clear, I guess, but it's a spot where anyone getting 21 plus minutes a night is a player that I'm going to be interested in, especially if they're getting top power play. Even if Connor Bedard isn't going, Donato's been going, Teravainen's been going, I think that he can be a reasonable ad. I'm not expecting massive numbers out of Artem Lev Shunov as a rookie coming in here, but I'm willing to give him a shot for sure. Seth Jones, just 1 assist in 5 games here for Florida, over 26 minutes, average time on ice, 39th shots per 60, 30th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 45th Corsi, 4 per 60, 22nd in on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. And he's on the top power play now with Ekblad out. I assume that should maintain for the rest of the season. I'm in on Seth Jones. Is it a perfect fit at this exact moment in time? No. Does that matter to me? Also, no. I think that just with the caliber of player, with Barkov there, with Reinhardt there, Samuskevich going off the way he's been going off, I just think they're absolutely going to figure this thing out, and Seth Jones is going to get in on some points. It might not be like, 60-point pace for the rest of the season, Seth Jones, but it should be 50-point pace, Seth Jones, for the rest of the season, and that's absolutely worth rostering. Elias Pettersson finally showing up. 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in his last 5, 19 minutes a night. 248th in shots per 60, but 63rd in individual scoring chances for per 60. 87th Corsi for per 60. 137 in on ice scoring chances for per 60. Thanks for coming out, Elias Pettersson. Only took you this long. um, yeah, as we've mentioned, clearly been dealing with some sort of injury at points throughout this season. Nice to see him get on the board here, and hopefully this is a sign of things to come for the rest of the season. This is a guy who can be massively efficient and drive play when he's at his best. So, yeah, baseline expectation, rest of season, I'm in the 70 to 75 point pace rest of season for Elias Pettersson. Ilya Tolvanen has 3 goals, 5 points in his last 5, 16 and a half minutes average time on ice. Seattle has a nice little schedule here, so that's why people are looking at him. He's playing with Eberle and Stevenson, both of which are hot as well, so that's clearly why this is becoming a bit of a interesting situation. 134th shots per 134th shots per 60. That's just okay. 223rd individual scoring chances for per 60. 187 Corsi for per 60. 224 scoring chances for per 60. I think he probably does fit with a Jordan Eberle as like the banging winger who has a good shot and Eberle can feed. So the general idea of him fitting on that line does make some sense to me. So I don't hate it, but I think for reference, he would be behind Schwartz and probably behind Beniers as well for me, above Chandler Stevenson if I was going to make a pickup. Jonathan Marchessault, just 2 points, both assists in his last 5 games, 18 minutes average time on ice, 310th in shots per 60. That's a little bit puzzling for a guy like Marchessault, who has been known to be a big-time shooter. He is playing with Colton Sissons and Michael Bunting on the second line. That could be a significant reason why, for sure. It's it's a little bit of a tough scenario for Marchessault, but Nashville doesn't have a bad schedule here. 4 games, 1 off night this week, 3 games, 0 off nights in week 23 here. So that is a little bit worse for sure, but then coming back again in week 24, they play 4 games, 2 off nights. So solid again there. I think that you can be forgiven from moving on from Jonathan Marchessault if you need something right now and he's not figuring into your lineup if you're benching him, and there's somebody out there that will get you games played and do something for you. Absolutely. I don't think you have to feel beholden to Marchessault just because he was a player that you drafted rather highly at the beginning of the year. That's not how we need to think about this if you need a win this week or next. Connor Bedard, 1 goal, 3 points in his last 5, over 20 minutes average time on ice, 56 shots per 60, 139 individual scoring chances for per 60, 237 Corsi for per 60, 192 on ice scoring chances for per 60. I think that Connor Bedard is still immensely talented. He doesn't have players to play with who can do what he needs them to do. So that's the tough part for sure. It's really hard to project Connor Bedard moving forward. It's just such a roller coaster situation there. You're seeing him getting game misconducts in back-to-back games. Just pretty wild stuff overall. He's playing with Colton Dach and Frank Nazar. All due respect to those two players, but they're not top-line forwards in the NHL right now. I think that Bedard can be like a 60-point guy and be quite relevant just given Chicago's playoff schedule here with all the off nights that they have. But do I think that he's going to be a difference maker? That's really hard to project. It's nice to see that shots are coming back a little bit here, but he is going to have to do all of it on his own to get something across. Quentin Byfield, 5 goals in his last 5 games. No assists, but 18.5 minutes average time on ice. 207 shots per 60, but 6th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. 196 Corsi, 4 per 60. 97 on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Yeah, I think Quentin Byfield is coming into his own. You see him taking the reins from Anze Kopitar. I think that's real, and it continues for the rest of the season. Do I think that he continues to be this efficient? Probably not. His shooting percentage over the last 5 games is 56%. That's pretty good, even for a guy who's ranking 6th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. So I think that probably ticks back down, but he should also probably factor into some assists here at some point as well. Yeah, it's just a spot where I think that Byfield is going to be, a 65 to 70 point player rest of the season. Very valuable for fantasy purposes, given this new deployment and the newfound swagger, whatever you want to call it. He's got it at the moment. He's really starting to figure things out. It's really just confidence, I think, for a player of Byfield's stature. He's got the speed, he's got the size, he's got all the intangibles, and he's just starting to put the package together at this point, and that's super exciting. Mackenzie Blackwood was asked to talk about him as well. Realistically, it sounds like it was just an illness that he was dealing with, so I expect him to be back to a starter's workload as soon as possible. Definitely, Colorado is not fighting for a playoff spot at this point in time. They are going to make the playoffs rather handily at this stage, but it's still a spot where there's a lot at stake for them because they can get, it's probably going to be Dallas versus Colorado in the Central Division there in the first round, but whoever plays on home ice gets the extra home ice game and gets to play on home ice first is very much still up for grabs here. So if Colorado can make some headway over the last bit of the season here and get home ice advantage away from Dallas, they would definitely love to do that. And so I do expect that Blackwood will play the lion's share of games moving forward and be very valuable for your fantasy playoffs. Marco Rossi has just 2 assists in his last 5 games here, playing almost 21 minutes a night. It's been a rough go. He probably was, out over his skis this season for sure. But in this game here tonight, he was playing with Matt Boldy and Gustav Nyquist. So that's not the worst situation for a guy like Marco Rossi. But yeah, it's a spot where you expected some regression to come just based on the percentages being as high as they were, 70% IPP, 18.4% shooting percentage on the season. Yeah, it makes sense that he's fallen back down to earth a little bit here, but I don't see anything too terrible in the underlying numbers here. Probably actually a little bit better than they have been on the season, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, definitely better than they have been on the season. So it's a good spot. He's getting lots of minutes. I do expect Rossi to be quite valuable in your fantasy playoffs, just given Minnesota's schedule. And last one here, Gabriel Landeskog. I retweeted today, maybe I shouldn't have even done this, but Landeskog was skating at the Avalanche practice, stayed apparently for the entire practice, and there was video of him skating really well, twisting, turning, doing things to his knee that would indicate that he can actually, play the game of hockey. So that's obviously exciting. If you're a Colorado fan, I went and looked at their cap situation, and honestly, I just can't see it unless they have a big injury. I cannot see how Landeskog can come back for them before the playoffs, given their cap situation. I don't think it would work. So that's kind of my take here. Maybe somebody who understands the cap better than I do can figure that out and figure out a way that it would work. But the way that I see it, there's no chance that Landeskog comes back given their cap situation. So my stance as of right now is that Landeskog will not return and be relevant for the fantasy playoffs. All right, we made it through the list. We've got a few more comments here, and then we'll get out of here. Jordan says, hey, Nate, what are your preferred skater and goalie cats to play with in category leagues? So yeah, the Apples and Genos Patron League is a categories league, and so I've kind of honed in on what I want that to be, because I get to make the rules there, and so I can kind of make it what I want it to be. So in that setup, I've got it: goals, assists, power play points, shots on goal, hits, blocks, wins, saves, and save percentage for goalies. So you have 6 skater cats and 3 goalie cats. Honestly, even that feels like too much emphasis on the goalies for me, but I can at least live with it there. So that's what I've been doing. I honestly don't hate anything that adds more value on point scoring, because I mean, that should be what we're most interested in for fantasy, right? Point scoring. So even like adding points to this, where it's goals, assists, points, power play points, shots on goal, hits, blocks, have 7 categories for skaters, and then the 3 goalie categories, and then you kind of get the byproduct of diminishing goalie impact a little bit as well there. Wouldn't hate that either. But something along those lines I think makes a lot of sense. What you really want to get away from in categories leagues, in my mind, is to get away from the stats where, just one in the week can win you the week, like the shorthanded points or shorthanded goals, the game-winning goals, the shutouts. All these, I think, are just coin flip things, and it takes away from the skill of the game, in my opinion. I want to have stats that you can actually accrue over the course of the week and make it worthwhile, I guess, is my opinion on that. Armin says, hey, sorry, did you talk about Bedard, Jenner, Norris, and Best for this week / rest of the season? Yes, I did. So I would take Bedard over both of those. Jenner, I could see the argument in a Banger's Cat specifically, but I would take Bedard over both of those in almost every scenario. Armin also asks, who's looking better under the hood between Fowler and Falk? It's a good question, given the situation there, where basically these are the 2 guys who are playing the power play on the back end. Both have 5 points over the last little bit. Falk's playing a bit more minutes, 22.5 to Fowler's 20.5. Underlying numbers, you got to give the edge to Falk, a bit more shot production. Looks like Falk, he's getting a bit more minutes. If you have to choose between the 2, I'd go Falk at the moment. Clixy, got here late. Did you talk about Faber at all? Got a buy this week, looking to add a D for the next 2, assuming Yossi is done. Yeah, I don't mind Faber for that purpose. I think you just got to be aware that he's probably a 40 to 45 point defenseman, even with Power Play 1 in Minnesota. But with Minnesota's schedule, if you're looking ahead to next week, they play 4 games, 1 off night that week, 4 games, 4 off nights in week 24. Faber is definitely a very relevant option for that purpose. All right, I think we made it all the way through all of the comments, all of the players we had to. So I think that's going to be all that I've got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard and saw today came from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band there for supplying music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. And that's it, folks. Much love.